Just some thoughts on all of these supposed defectors of antinatalism, which I think is kind of funny. I think there's been too much pressure on too few people in the argument, and it's put people on the defensive too much. And I think that rather than putting on suits of armor and going at each other individually, going against individuals personally, rather than attacking the ideas, has led to burnout. And I think there has to be holding natalists responsible for making their arguments to justify procreation. I think it's been way too easy for the natalist, those who hold the natalist position, to ask for justification from the antinatalist and wag the dog that way. I think it's the natalist position which needs to justify what it's doing. And I think it's telling that Unworshipped Deity said to me in comments that he thought he might have been hearing from me the natalist term for the first time used that way. And that's how I understood what he was saying. And if that's the case, I think that's unfortunate, because I think the term natalist should have been, from the get-go used in the argument to keep that focus on who is the aggressor, because the antinatalist position is the pacifist position. So I think as a pacifist position, there has to be focus maintained on the aggressor and questioning of the aggressor. And yes, I do see natalist as very aggressive philosophy. So I think it's a sign of progress that there are discussions going on about how the argument is made, and I think that there has to be flexibility to allow people on either side of the issue to play devil's advocate and to change their opinions and try on the different sides of the issue without jumping to conclusions about their intent or saying that they're weak-willed or something like that. I think being a Holocaust victim is not justification for the natalist position. I don't know if that's what anyone has done, but it was referenced, or it was made reference to. And I think, being a Holocaust victim is not justification for natalism. I don't think we could say that there's just been one Holocaust. I think that Holocaust of sentient life is ongoing. And keeping that at the forefront and keeping the natalist position at the forefront, I think, will go a long way to making the antinatalist argument for the antinatalist position without constantly having to defend the antinatalist position and get sidetracked. It's very easy to get distracted when bringing up the need for justification from the natalist. It's very easy to get distracted by all of the arguments about suicide and all of that. And I think focus has to be maintained on the onus is on the natalist position to justify procreation. And it's a very, very simple argument. It's a very, very simple call for justification. This is not complicated. And we can say that, we can all see that war is wrong and that Holocaust is wrong. And yet we continue to go to war and continue to commit genocide. And that's because it's complicated. It's made complicated. It isn't a complicated issue. It's very clear to see what's right and what's wrong, but it's made a complicated issue by politics. And I think that's what's happening with the natalist discussion, is that it's being made into something more complicated than it is. And so I think I've learned in my last two videos in the comments section how easy it's been to distract me from a very simple video that I do, and the simple points not getting addressed whatsoever, because it's an easy trick to play on the antinatalist to get the antinatalist on the defensive and drag them away from the natalist obligation. So that's from my own personal experience. I've gone through and deleted comments, and that's my comments included, that don't pertain to the subject at hand in the video, because people will go on for 40 comments and get into a discussion with me that isn't anything whatsoever about the video. So keeping people on the topic and holding the natalist feet to the fire, so to speak, to say what it is that justifies them to procreate, I think will go a long way. And just repeating that over and over and over, that they can't get away from that, will go a long way to making the antinatalist argument for the antinatalist position without the antinatalist having to do much of anything. And embedded in that resistance to justify procreation is the sense of entitlement and the selfishness and the defeatist attitude that we should continue on when there's very little reasonable expectation of hope. That all creates a denial system, and that is going to all put into motion a lot of distracting efforts from the natalist position to put the antinatalist on the defensive. But the fact of the matter is that the antinatalist position is of the minority. It is it's the natalist position which needs to be explored more than the antinatalist position, because it's the natalist position that is held by the majority. And so sticking to that and not getting sidetracked with identity issues with people, and sidetracked by, being defensive of the antinatalist position, I think is important. I've held these views since I was very young, and I've said over and over, I don't need a guru to tell me shit about this. I know that the antinatalist position is the most logical, and it's the right position. And so, if I'm the one not doing harm by not procreating, then the onus is on those who are procreating to justify procreation, to justify bringing another into existence, to justify they're bringing another into existence without any guarantee that they're going to be there to provide for the existence that they're bringing into, the being that they're bringing into existence. And how is bringing another into existence when one hasn't achieved what one expected to achieve and has seen others not able to achieve what they expected to achieve because of the structures that are in place? How is that not a defeatist position? And how likely is it that we could create a new generation that would be able to overthrow the powers that be and to create a humane and a just and a livable planet? It's not realistic. It's pie in the sky. And that alone goes a long way to revealing the faulty logic of the natalist position. So, that's just a starting point, and the argument is really not that complicated. Procreation is not complicated. We have only had awareness of birth control and the value of birth control recently. So, that's just proof that, we don't have much insight into what we're doing. And so the discussion needs to be had on what we are doing when we reproduce at the rates that we're reproducing. And the problems with the eugenics program would be that the ones who are in control would gain control of that eugenics program, when it's the people who are in control that would most likely need to be weeded out with the eugenics program. So there's really not much argument for eugenics either. So all of this splitting off of antinatalism into different little factions isn't helpful. And, I think there has to be just a solidarity and a concerted effort on keeping the focus on the natalist position and the flaws in the logic of the natalist position rather than any flaws in the logic of the antinatalist position, which isn't causing any harm. Ah, my computer's frozen. I can't stop it. My camera's not responding. I can't stop the camera.